The vast expanse of space stretched endlessly before the GCS Starweaver as it glided through the darkness of Sector 7. Stars twinkled like distant diamonds against the black canvas, their light barely touching the sleek curves of the Galactic Council vessel. Admiral Jinwoo Park had expected another routine patrol, just like the thousands before it. He couldn't have been more wrong. The first indication that something was different came when the ship's sensors detected an unknown energy signature. It started as a small blip, but within moments, it grew into something that made the ship's most experienced officers stare in disbelief. "Admiral, you need to see this," called out Lieutenant Su Jin from her monitoring station. Her fingers flew across the holographic display, bringing up detailed readings that made even less sense up close. Jinwoo moved with careful grace, his four-fingered hands clasped behind his back as he approached the station. His mandibles, usually still and composed, began clicking with increasing frequency as he processed the information before him. In his 30 cycles of service, he had never seen anything like it. The energy readings were off the charts. The power output they were detecting would have torn apart any known ship in the Galactic Council's fleet. Yet there it was, moving through space as if it was the most natural thing in the world. "Get me a visual," Jinwoo ordered, his voice steady despite the growing unease in his chest. The main view screen flickered to life, and the bridge crew collectively held their breath. The ship that appeared before them was unlike anything they had ever seen. Where Galactic Council vessels were all smooth curves and elegant lines, this ship was angular, aggressive, and bristling with what could only be weapons. Massive gun emplacements dotted its hull like angry hornets' nests, and thick armor plates covered every surface. It was as if someone had taken every peaceful design principle the Council held dear and done the exact opposite. Commander Do-Young Kim, Jinwoo's second-in-command and longtime friend, moved to stand beside him. "Their reactor output alone would tear apart any of our vessels," he whispered, his voice a mixture of awe and horror. "How are they containing such power?" The unknown vessel's transponder suddenly activated, broadcasting an identification signal. Jinwoo watched as their computer systems translated the alien text. "U.S. Vigilant." "Sir," called out the communications officer, "they're hailing us." "The signal. It's coming from a species calling themselves humans." Jinwoo nodded slowly, still trying to process what he was seeing. The crew of the Vigilant could be seen through the viewscreen now, going about their duties with casual efficiency. They moved around their stations as if they weren't standing next to enough firepower to level a small moon, as if the massive energy readings weren't anything to be concerned about. "Open a channel," Jinwoo ordered, straightening his uniform. As the ranking officer in this sector, first contact would fall to him. He just hoped these humans were as peaceful as they seemed, despite their terrifying military capability. The view screen changed to show the bridge of the U.S. Vigilant. Jinwoo found himself face to face with a bipedal species he had never seen before. They had no mandibles, no scales, and only 2 arms, yet there was something in their eyes that spoke of intelligence and curiosity. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earth Ship Vigilant," the human commander spoke, her words being automatically translated. "We come in peace and wish to establish diplomatic relations." Jinwoo felt his mandibles click faster. Peace. Their very ship design spoke of war, of overwhelming force, of destruction on a scale that made his scales itch. Yet here they were, speaking of peace while sitting in what essentially amounted to a mobile Death Star. "I am Admiral Jinwoo Park of the Galactic Council ship Starweaver," he responded, forcing his mandibles to still. "We welcome peaceful contact. However, I must ask about your vessel's capabilities. Our sensors indicate power levels that are concerning." Captain Chen looked confused for a moment, then smiled. "Oh, you mean our standard loadout? This is just a light patrol vessel. Is there something wrong with our systems?" The entire bridge crew of the Starweaver froze. "Light patrol vessel. Standard loadout." Jinwoo felt a shiver run down his spine as he realized the implications. If this was their idea of a light patrol vessel, what did their actual warships look like? The meeting that was about to unfold would change the galaxy forever, and Jinwoo knew he was standing at the crossroads of history. As he prepared to respond to the human captain, he couldn't help but wonder if the galaxy was ready for a species that considered planet-killing power to be standard. The bright lights of the Galactic Council Station's conference room reflected off the crystalline walls, creating rainbow patterns that would have been beautiful if Ha-Yun-Li wasn't so frustrated. She sat at the long table, surrounded by alien engineers who kept looking at her as if she had suggested building ships out of paper. Their expressions ranged from confused to concerned, and some even seemed afraid. Ha-Yun picked up one of the holographic models floating above the table. It showed a typical Galactic Council cruiser, all elegant curves and delicate spires. The ship looked more like a piece of art than a military vessel. She rotated it slowly, studying its inner workings with growing disbelief. "Let me make sure I understand this correctly," she said, pointing to the ship's power core. "You have a single reactor system, with no backups." Senior designer Kita Choi nodded, his elongated head bobbing slightly. "Of course, our antimatter containment systems are perfectly calibrated. They have never failed in over 300 years of service." Ha-Yun fought the urge to bang her head against the table. These aliens were brilliant engineers. Their technology was incredibly advanced in many ways. But their entire approach to ship design seemed to assume nothing would ever go wrong. "But what happens if it does fail?" she pressed. "What if you take battle damage, or hit an unexpected spatial anomaly, or face sabotage?" The room fell silent. The alien engineers looked at each other, their large eyes blinking in confusion. Finally, Kita spoke up. "Why would anyone want to sabotage a ship? That would be uncivilized." Ha-Yun pulled up the schematics for a standard human destroyer on her tablet. The aliens leaned forward, then immediately recoiled at what they saw. Where their ships had single, elegant systems, human vessels were packed with redundant everything. Backup reactors, emergency power systems, multiple shield generators, and enough thrust capabilities to still move even if half the engines were destroyed. "This is madness," one of the alien engineers whispered. "The power requirements alone, the complexity, the maintenance costs. Better expensive than dead." Ha-Yun replied firmly. She had lost friends early in her career when a single system failure cascaded through a ship. Humanity had learned those lessons in blood. "We call it Murphy's Law. Anything that can go wrong will go wrong, usually at the worst possible moment." Kaita studied the human schematics with growing horror. "But your weapons systems, they're designed to completely destroy targets. Our weapons simply disable key systems with surgical precision." "And what happens when you meet an enemy who doesn't play by your rules?" Ha-Yun asked quietly. "Someone who doesn't care about being civilized." The silence that followed was deafening. She could see the alien engineers struggling with the concept. Their society had evolved differently, had never faced the kind of threats that shaped human military doctrine. "Look at your ship designs," Ha-Yun continued, gesturing at their holographic models. "They're beautiful, efficient, and incredibly advanced. But they're built on the assumption that everyone follows the same rules. One hit to any critical system, and the whole ship is lost." She stood up and walked to the main display, bringing up simulation after simulation of various disaster scenarios. "We humans learn to prepare for the worst because we've seen the worst. We've fought wars where both sides tried to completely destroy each other. We've faced natural disasters that wiped out entire cities. We've dealt with terrorists who don't care about rules of engagement." The alien engineers watched in silence as she ran through scenarios where backup systems saved entire crews, where redundant power cores kept ships fighting even after taking massive damage, where emergency protocols turned certain death into narrow survival. "You call it wasteful," Ha-Yun said, turning to face them. "We call it survival. Every redundant system, every backup generator, Every emergency protocol exists because at some point, someone died because it wasn't there. Keith's expression had changed from confusion to thoughtful consideration. Perhaps there is wisdom in your approach. But surely there must be a balance between preparedness and efficiency. Hae-Yoon smiled for the first time since the meeting began. That's exactly what I'm hoping we can work on together. Your precision technology combined with our redundancy philosophy could create something revolutionary. As the meeting continued, Hae-Yoon could see the alien engineers starting to engage with the concept. They began asking questions about specific systems, discussing potential hybrid designs, and even sharing their own close calls where a backup system might have helped. It was a start, she thought, a small step toward bridging the vast gulf between their different approaches to engineering. The galaxy might not be ready for humanity's paranoid over-engineering, but maybe humanity could help it prepare for the unexpected. The red alert klaxon pierced through the calm atmosphere of the U.S. Dauntless's bridge, turning the peaceful cargo escort mission into something far more complicated. Captain Jae-Hun Song sat forward in his command chair, his dark eyes fixed on the tactical display showing two Galactic Council fleets exchanging fire in what should have been peaceful space. "Status report," he called out, keeping his voice steady despite the growing tension. Lieutenant Min at Tactical responded immediately, her fingers dancing across her console. "Two Council fleets, sir. 8 ships on each side. They appear to be trading precise shots, targeting non-critical systems. Energy readings are minimal compared to our standards." Jae-Hun watched the delicate light show playing out before them. The alien ships moved with grace, their weapons flickering between them like elegant streaks of starlight. To human eyes trained on far more devastating warfare, it almost looked like a dance rather than a battle. "Any casualties?" he asked, already knowing the answer would shape his next decision. "None detected, Captain," Commander Park reported from his science station. "Their weapons seem designed to disable rather than destroy. But the conflict is escalating. They're moving closer to the trade routes." Jae-Hun rubbed his temples. The Dauntless was a sovereign-class warship, designed to handle threats far more serious than this elegant alien squabble. Standard procedure was clear. They had to protect civilian shipping lanes. But bringing a human warship into an alien conflict carried its own risks. "Open a channel," he ordered finally. "All frequencies, maximum broadcast." The communications officer nodded, and Jae-Hun straightened in his chair. "This is Captain Song of the Earth vessel Dauntless. Cease fire immediately and power down your weapons." The alien ships continued their dance of light and energy, completely ignoring the human transmission. Either they were too focused on their conflict to notice, or they simply didn't consider the lone human vessel a factor in their engagement. "Sir," Lieutenant Min reported, "they're moving closer to the shipping lanes. At their current trajectory, they'll be in range of civilian vessels in less than 10 minutes. Jae-Hun sighed deeply. He had hoped to avoid this, but they were leaving him no choice. "Power up main batteries," he ordered. "Target warning shots, 5 kilometers from their bow." The bridge crew moved with practiced efficiency, but there was an undercurrent of tension. They all knew what their ship was capable of. The Dauntless's main guns could reduce any of these alien vessels to atoms with a single shot. The massive weapon systems hummed to life, energy readings climbing as capacitors charged. The sound alone was enough to make the hull vibrate slightly, a reminder of the devastating power at their command. Before they could even fire, everything changed. Both alien fleets suddenly went dark, their weapons powering down so fast it must have triggered safety protocols. Emergency surrender signals flooded all frequencies, their universal distress beacons lighting up the sensor boards like a Christmas tree. They're all surrendering, sir," Lieutenant Min reported, sounding almost confused. "All 16 ships, just from us powering up our weapons." Jae-Hun leaned back in his chair, understanding dawning on his face. The aliens had finally noticed the energy readings from the Dauntless's weapon systems. To them, It must have seemed like a deity of war had suddenly appeared in their midst. "Stand down weapons," he ordered softly. "Open a channel to both fleet commanders." The view screen split to show two very different alien faces, both wearing expressions that translated clearly across species barriers. Pure terror. "This is Captain Song," he said calmly. "Now that I have your attention, perhaps we can discuss whatever disagreement led to this conflict, without weapons fire near civilian shipping lanes." The alien commanders practically fell over themselves agreeing. Within hours, they had arranged for Galactic Council mediators to arrive and handle the dispute properly. As Jae-hun wrote up his report later that evening, he couldn't help but smile at the irony. The Dauntless hadn't fired a single shot. Just the threat of human firepower had been enough to shock both sides into remembering their diplomatic options. Word would spread quickly through Council space about this incident, the human ship that ended a battle by simply preparing to fight. It wasn't the kind of first impression they had hoped to make, but perhaps it would serve as a useful reminder. Humanity's overwhelming firepower came with overwhelming restraint. Sometimes, Jae-hun muttered to himself as he finished his report, "The best shot is the one you never have to fire." The grand chamber of the Galactic Council buzzed with nervous energy as representatives from 1,000 worlds gathered for what would become a historic session. The massive circular room, with its soaring crystal dome and floating platforms, had seen many debates in its time, but none quite like this. Councillor Myra Kang's hologram shimmered into existence above the central speaking platform, her traditional council robes flowing in a non-existent wind. The chamber fell silent as she began to speak, her voice carrying to every corner of the vast space. "Esteemed colleagues," she began, her voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. "The recent incident in Sector 7 has brought to light a matter we can no longer ignore. These humans don't even realize their ships qualify as superweapons by our standards. Their baseline military doctrine exceeds our worst-case scenario preparations." The chamber exploded into chaos. Representatives from dozens of species began speaking at once, their voices mixing into a cacophony of concern, fear, and excitement. Some stood at their platforms, gesturing wildly with various appendages, while others huddled in small groups, whispering urgently. Representative Ta-ho Shin, his scaled skin reflecting the chamber's light, rose to speak. "We must act now," he declared, his tail lashing with agitation. "Every human vessel in our space is a potential planet killer. We need immediate restrictions on their ship construction." More voices joined his, calling for containment, restrictions, and even isolation of Earth. The fear in the chamber was almost tangible. Images of the U.S. Dauntless incident played on floating screens, showing the moment when 16 council ships surrendered to a single human vessel that hadn't even fired a shot. Security Chief Sung Min Choi watched from his platform, his 4 eyes taking in the growing panic. He had spent the last 3 months studying human military doctrine, and what he found had surprised him. When the chamber's noise reached a fever pitch, he finally activated his speaker. "My fellow council members," his deep voice cut through the chaos, "we are missing something crucial here. In all our recorded interactions with humans, their ships, while overwhelming in power, have never been used aggressively." The chamber grew quiet as he continued. "Look at their history. Yes, they build ships that could crack planets. Yes, their standard patrol vessels carry enough firepower to level cities, but they use this power with remarkable restraint." He gestured to the floating displays, cycling through images of human vessels. "They developed these weapons because they had to fight wars among themselves. They learned to prepare for the worst because they experienced the worst. Perhaps we should learn from their philosophy of peace through strength." Ambassador Jai Yun-Lee from the Outer Rim colonies stood next. "Are we not being hypocritical? We pride ourselves on our advanced civilization, yet we're discussing restricting a species simply because their defensive capabilities make us uncomfortable." The debate continued for hours. Proposals were made and rejected. Some suggested requiring humans to downgrade their ships in council space. Others wanted to fast-track Earth's membership in the Council to better integrate them into galactic society. Through it all, Mireille watched and listened. As the senior diplomat who had first contacted Earth, she understood both the fear and the fascination her colleagues felt. When the chamber finally began to settle, she spoke again. "Perhaps," she said softly, but her voice carried clearly, "we should consider what this revelation says about us, not them. We've built our society on the assumption that advanced civilization means minimal military capability. The humans have shown us a different path, one where overwhelming power does not necessarily lead to its abuse." She paused, letting her words sink in. "They don't build these ships to threaten us. They build them because they believe in being prepared. And in all our observations, they've shown remarkable wisdom in how they use that preparation." The chamber grew thoughtful. The initial panic began to fade, replaced by more nuanced discussions. Some representatives began sharing stories of positive interactions with human vessels, space rescue operations, anti-piracy patrols, humanitarian missions. By the end of the session, no restrictive measures were passed. Instead, the Council voted to establish a joint military doctrine committee, where humans and Council species could learn from each other. As the representatives filed out of the chamber, Mireille's hologram flickered one last time. "Remember," she said to those still listening, "the humans have shown us that true strength lies not in the weapons we possess, but in the wisdom to know when not to use them." The meeting that many had feared would lead to conflict instead opened the door to understanding. The galaxy was changing, and perhaps the humans, with their over-engineered ships and careful restraint, were exactly what it needed. The stale air of the pirate flagship, Shadow's Grace, reeked of nervous tension and old metal. Eugen Buddick stood on his command deck, his cybernetic eye scanning the tactical displays with growing excitement. 12 ships strong, his fleet was the terror of 3 sectors, and the human shipping lanes before them promised riches beyond measure. "My lord," his second-in-command whispered, "perhaps we should reconsider the warnings about human vessels." Eugen silenced him with a sharp gesture. "Warnings spread by cowards and fools," he said, his voice carrying across the bridge. "Look at their cargo ships. Fat, slow, laden with wealth. These humans are merchants, not warriors." The tactical display showed the convoy clearly. 5 massive cargo haulers, their holds bulging with rare earth minerals and advanced technology. The pirates had tracked them for 3 days, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. "No escorts?" Eugen asked, his organic eye narrowing suspiciously. "None detected, my lord," his sensor officer reported. "They seem to be traveling alone." "Too easy," a small voice whispered in Eugen's mind. He ignored it. The potential profit was too great to ignore. With this haul, he could finally buy that seat on the Shadow Council he'd been eyeing. "Move in," he ordered. "Standard attack pattern. Disable their engines first. Then, new contact." The sensor officer suddenly shouted, his voice cracking. "Single vessel, just dropped out of FTL." Eugen spun to face the main viewer. A ship had appeared between his fleet and their prey. It was angular, aggressive, bristling with weapon ports that made his cybernetic eyes threat assessment protocols scream in mourning. "They're hailing us," his communications officer reported, fear evident in his voice. "Put it through," Eugen ordered, trying to maintain his confident demeanor. The voice that filled the bridge was calm, almost casual. "This is Captain Sejong Park of the U.S. Thunderchild. You are engaged in piracy in Earth-protected space. Power down and prepare to be boarded." Eugen laughed, but it sounded hollow even to his own ears. 1 ship against 12. What arrogance. He turned to his crew, spreading his arms wide. "Let's show these humans what real pirates can do." "My lord," his tactical officer tried to interject. "Their weapon systems air. Fire. All ships, open fire," Eugen commanded. The space between the ships lit up as the pirate fleet launched their attack. Energy beams and plasma torpedoes streaked toward the lone human vessel. Yu-Jin's triumphant smile lasted exactly 3 seconds. The Thunderchild's point defense grid activated. Thousands of tiny energy pulses erupted from its surface, intercepting every single incoming attack. Not one shot got through. The display was beautiful in its terrible efficiency. Then the human ship responded. There was no warning, no dramatic build-up. One moment Yu-Jin's fleet existed, the next moment it was being systematically erased from reality. The Thunderchild's weapons moved with precision that seemed impossible for their size, each shot finding critical systems with unerring accuracy. Shields failing. Someone screamed. Reactor breach on ships 3 through 7. We've lost all weapons. Yu-Jin stood frozen, watching his fleet die. Ships that had taken him years to acquire were reduced to expanding clouds of debris in mere minutes. His flagship's shields buckled under impacts that felt like the fists of angry gods. "Sir, they're targeting our bridge." The last thing Yu-Jin saw was the Thunderchild's main gun swiveling toward his position. His cybernetic eyes' threat assessment protocols finally gave up trying to calculate the danger level and simply displayed terminal. The explosion that followed was mercifully quick. Hours later, Captain Sejong Park sat in his ready room aboard the Thunderchild, finishing his report. The cargo convoy had continued on its way, barely delayed by the incident. His crew had already collected the few escape pods they detected, treating the surviving pirates with the same medical care they give their own people. "Computer," he said quietly, "add a note to the report. Recommend increased patrols in this sector." These pirates clearly hadn't taken the warning seriously. Perhaps a more visible presence will prevent future misunderstandings. He looked out his viewport at the debris field that had once been a pirate fleet. It wasn't the first time someone had underestimated a human warship, and he doubted it would be the last. But maybe, just maybe, this incident would help spread the word. The humans' reputation for overwhelming firepower was well-earned, as was their reputation for mercy to surrendered foes. Too bad Yu-Jin Baek hadn't lived to learn that lesson. The research center on Europa Station hummed with activity as Professor Jae-in Kim walked through its gleaming corridors. Floating holograms showed ship designs from across the galaxy, a visual symphony of different engineering philosophies. She paused before one display showing the elegant curves of a Galactic Council cruiser, its systems laid bare in glowing blue lines. Next to her, Dr. Min-Ho Lee manipulated the hologram with practiced ease, zooming in on the ship's weapon systems. His 6-fingered hands moved through the light with grace that spoke of years of experience with the technology. "Look at this targeting matrix," Jae-in said, pointing to a particularly complex subsystem. "The precision is incredible. They can target individual computer nodes without damaging surrounding systems." The two engineers had been working together for 6 months now, part of the Joint Human Council Technology Exchange Program. Every day brought new discoveries, new ways of looking at problems they'd thought solved long ago. "Watch this simulation," Min-Ho replied, inputting a series of commands. The hologram showed a council ship disabling a hostile vessel, its weapons striking with surgical precision. Single-shot disabling of key systems. No collateral damage, no catastrophic chain reactions. Jae-in nodded, remembering how human ships approached the same problem, usually by overwhelming the target's shields and destroying whole sections. Effective, certainly, but hardly elegant. "Your precision targeting systems are remarkable," she told her colleague, genuine admiration in her voice. "The ability to disable specific systems without causing catastrophic damage. We could learn from this." Min-Ho switched the display to show a human dreadnought. The stark angles and multiple redundant systems were a sharp contrast to Council designs. "And we could benefit from your redundancy philosophy," he said thoughtfully. "Perhaps there is a middle ground between our approaches." Their conversation was interrupted by a group of young engineers, a mix of humans and various Council species, entering the lab for their daily training session. Jae-in smiled, remembering how tense these sessions had been in the beginning. Now the different species worked together seamlessly, each bringing their own perspective to shared problems. "Professor Kim, called out one of the human students, excitement clear in her voice. We've been working on integrating Council precision targeting with human-style backup systems. Would you take a look? The student pulled up their project, and both senior engineers leaned in with interest. The design showed a hybrid weapon system, Council precision married to human redundancy. It was rough, still full of problems to solve, but the potential was clear. See here, the student explained. We've maintained the precision targeting capabilities, but added backup power systems and multiple targeting computers. If any part fails, the others take over automatically. Minho's eyes widened as he studied the design. Fascinating. You've solved the power distribution problem we were struggling with last week. How did you manage that? As the student explained, Jayan watched the interaction with satisfaction. This was why the exchange program was so valuable. Each side had developed incredible technologies, but in isolation, guided by their own assumptions and experiences. You know, she said when the students had left, my grandfather used to tell me stories about the old wars on Earth, how every new weapon led to new defenses, and every new defense led to new weapons. Minho looked up from the hybrid design he was still studying. And now we have a chance to break that cycle, to take the best of both approaches, your precision and our redundancy, your elegance and our preparedness. We're not just building better ships, we're building a better way of thinking about them. They spent the rest of the day working on the student's design, refining it, solving problems that neither human nor Council engineers could have tackled alone. When the station's artificial night cycle began, they had something that looked promising. A weapons system that could disable without destroying, but would keep working even if half its components failed. You know what the really interesting part is? Jayan said as they prepared to leave the lab. We're not just learning about each other's technology. We're learning about each other. Every design choice, every engineering decision, tells us something about how we think, what we value. Minho nodded, his alien features set in what Jayan had learned to recognize as a smile. And perhaps that's the most valuable exchange of all. As they walked out, the hybrid design rotated slowly in the hologram behind them, a symbol of what could be achieved when different cultures came together not in fear, but in curiosity and mutual respect. The stars shone brightly against the void of space as Admiral Hai Jin-yoon stood at the massive observation window of the Titan station. 10 years had passed since humanity's first contact with the Galactic Council, 10 years of learning, growing, and changing together. Now those years of work were about to bear fruit. Below the station, bathed in the gentle light of Saturn's rings, floated the most advanced starship ever built. The GCS Harmony was neither the stark angular design of human vessels nor the flowing curves of Council ships. Instead, it represented something entirely new, a perfect fusion of both civilizations' technologies and philosophies. Hai-Jin watched as maintenance drones made their final checks on the ship's hull. The Harmony's surface gleamed with both the crystalline technology of the Council and the robust armor of human design. Where most human ships bristled with obvious weapons, the Harmony's systems were elegantly integrated into its structure. Yet beneath that graceful exterior lay enough firepower to match any human dreadnought. "Beautiful, isn't she?" a voice asked from behind her. Hai-Jin turned to see Fleet Commander Jun-Seo Park approaching, his formal uniform adorned with both human and Council insignia. His presence here was itself a symbol of how far they'd come. The first human officer to command a joint peacekeeping fleet. "She's everything we hoped for," Hai-Jin replied, turning back to the window. "Did you see the final test results?" Jun-Seo nodded, coming to stand beside her. Perfect scores across the board. Council precision weapons powered by human reactor technology. Multiple redundant systems that can switch to Council energy-efficient mode during peaceful operations. She's faster than our ships, more durable than theirs, and more adaptable than either. They watched in comfortable silence as the maintenance drones completed their work. The Harmony's crew, a mix of humans and various Council species, were already aboard, preparing for their first mission. They would patrol the border regions, protecting trade routes and responding to distress calls from any species. Remember how scared they were of us at first? Hai-Jin asked softly. How our ships terrify them. Jun Seo chuckled. And remember how we thought their ships were fragile and underarmed. We all had so much to learn. A gentle chime indicated the beginning of the launch sequence. The massive dock arms holding the Harmony began to retract, releasing the ship into space. Its engines glowed with a soft blue light. Council technology powered by human reactors. Ready to make history? Chun Seo asked, watching the ship move gracefully away from the station. Hai-Jin smiled, thinking of all the steps that had led to this moment. The first terrified contact, the engineering exchanges, the pirate incident that proved humans could be both powerful and merciful, the countless hours of scientists and engineers working together to create something new. We already have, she replied. Now we're just making it better. As if in response to her words, the Harmony's engines flared brighter. The ship accelerated smoothly, its hybrid drive systems working in perfect harmony. Within moments, it would make its first FTL jump, beginning its mission to protect and serve all species equally. You know what the best part is? Jun Seo said as they watched the ship prepare for jump. This is just the beginning. The Harmony-class ships are already being built in shipyards across both human and council space. Each one will be a symbol of what we can achieve together. The Harmony's jump drive engaged, creating a beautiful display of light as the ship prepared to enter FTL. For a brief moment, it seemed to stretch, its elegant form elongating as space itself bent around it. Then, in a flash of light that combined human power with council precision, it was gone. Hai-Jin touched the window gently, her fingers leaving marks on the transparent material. To think, 10 years ago, we were worried about going to war with each other. Now we're building ships together, protecting each other's worlds, learning from each other's mistakes and achievements. As they turned to leave the observation deck, both officers paused for one last look at the space where the Harmony had been. The ship might be gone, but what it represented remained. A promise of a future where different species could work together, combining their strengths and overcoming their weaknesses. The galaxy was changing, and humanity had played a crucial role in that change. Not through force or fear, but through the willingness to learn, to share, and to grow. The Harmony was more than just a ship. It was proof that understanding could bridge even the widest of divides. And somewhere out there, traveling faster than light, the first of a new generation of ships carried that message to the stars.